everyone. I'm going to talk you through the units within both the Graduate Diploma of Environmental Planning as well as the Master of Planning. I have access to all these units online in the UTAS system called Milo. So let's have a quick look. Before we do that, just a reminder that this is the way that the units are set up. In the Graduate Diploma, if you're starting in February, you do critical planning and statutory land use planning. So let's have a look at those two units. So I taught both of those units this year in 2024. The critical planning unit is the theory unit. And so, sorry, just get the controls out of the way so I can go to content. You have a range of topics and there's an introduction to what is planning, a great question right at the start of your course, why we plan, who we're planning for, types of processes that we engage in, who governs planning. Each of these pages has a set of resources associated with it, a lecture which you do before class, and some readings and resources. So that's what the content looks like before class. And then in class, there is the introduction to your assessments and the work that we do to investigate a particular topic. So there might be some reading, there's helping you step through. In the case of this particular unit, the first task is to write a city portfolio based on a local government area of your choice. We modelled this task using Clarence, which is on Hobart's Eastern Shore. So we had a look at what was on the webpage in terms of Clarence's strategic plan. Where did Clarence see themselves being? What were their main priorities? What were their issues? A lot of low-lying areas in Clarence, some particular problems around adapting to climate change. That was a little bit of a focus for that example in these workshops. In terms of the assessment for that unit, there was the initial city portfolio. There was a deep dive into a particular case study, huge development on Hobart's Eastern Shore, and some discussion assessment as well. So the theory unit really gives you a grounding into the literature. You investigate who you're planning for, why that happens, and how that can be informed by all the amazing planners that have come before us. In the land use planning unit, which is called statutory land use planning, for those of you in the planning degrees, KGA 512, this is very job focused. This is the unit that prepares you for work, not just in Tasmania, but also in other jurisdictions. Once you've learned the way that statutory planning works in one area, you're very well prepared to transfer those skills to other areas. So we go through the rules of the planning system, essentially. So this gets you work in places like local government, in consultancies, where you need to understand who the planning actors are, what the planning rules are. Planning schemes are part of the planning rules. So what you can and can't do in planning, and it really demystifies the discussion that you see in public about planning decisions, about whether we should approve an AFL stadium in Central Hobart, the process by which that gets assessed, and the ways in which people can comment on what they think about the stadium in Hobart. And then each year the case study changes. In 2024, we looked at this huge proposal for Skylands. If I go to, and so there's background lectures, and then the case study had a fieldwork visit to Tranmere in the middle of semester. And that's what this incredible site looks like. It's a huge area of land that has been knocked around a bit. You can see that there's not a lot of natural vegetation left. It's mostly cleared, mostly exotic grass. And you have these new housing developments creeping around the peninsula. So council have asked for some strategic work to be done, and we had a look at both the rules as well as sort of the bigger picture of how you might use this peninsula, or how you might not use the peninsula and do other things with it. So both those units give you a chance to really rattle around and understand the kind of basics of the theory and the practice of planning. You then, in your first year, in second semester, do the urban planning and design unit. So if I go to semester 2, I can get into Kate's urban planning and design unit and have a look at the different topics here. So I know this might be a little bit small in the video, but this looks at places from a planning perspective. It looks at the history. It looks at how design can help people understand and plan for better outcomes in urban places. There's a field trip, 2 field trips, in fact, and a lot of talking about livability, inclusion, the kind of mess that we've made, and how planning is part of the answer in terms of coming up with solutions for a more equitable and more sustainable world. Like most of the units, 3 assessment tasks, and that's supported by workshops and online learning. In all of the units, there's provision for on-campus as well as distance learning, and an increasing percentage of our students are studying only by distance, and we never see them. One of the most common questions I get is in the space where you get to choose, and that is, in particular, should I do environmental impact assessment or should I do protected area planning and management system? So these are second semester 25% credit points. Those of you who've already done EIA as an undergraduate, talk to me about an exemption. We can discuss whether you probably already have enough such that you don't need to do the elective, in which case you only need to do 3 units to get that graduate diploma of environmental planning done. EIA is my baby. It is a bit of a sister unit to statutory land use planning, but it's got this very strong environmental angle. So how do the rules work in terms of development control when it comes to environmental planning, environmental damage? So we look at planning schemes again, but we have this particular lens around Aboriginal and perspectives and country. We look at things like fire, natural values. In studying the stadium this semester, we looked at environmental variables like noise, lighting, dust, coastal inundation. So depending on the particular example that you're looking at, there's a whole range of environmental qualities that might be affected. This unit steps you through those, starting with a local example, building up to larger examples of things like mines, wind farms, salmon farming. And then this year, in 2024, we finished by looking at the environmental impact assessment of the stadium, because all the documents were available at just the right time of semester. A very unusual occurrence where those things line up really nicely for teaching purposes, but we hit the sweet spot this year. Environmental impact assessment, again, is another super pragmatic unit about learning the rules of development control. So if you're very focused on making yourself employable, this can be a really nice pairing with statutory land use planning, because at the end of both these units, you would be very competitive for roles at local government and consultancies at the Environmental Protection Authority as well. If you're not doing environmental impact assessment, you will, Milo lets me back up. you will be doing the Protected Area Planning and Management System unit. So again, I'll open the content up and show you the unit overview. So this is a planning unit that dives into protected areas, obviously. So for looking at the ways that there's planning and management in areas like the Tasmanian Wilderness World Heritage, but also a whole range of other protected areas, then this is the unit for you. A little bit more of a focus on environmental management rather than planning, statutory planning and the planning rules in environmental impact assessment. This unit covers topics like protected area plans, conceptual models for protected area management, governance in protected areas, learning about particular tools within protected area planning, like the recreation opportunity spectrum, tourism and visitor management, looking at risk assessment with respect to planning in protected areas. So it has quite probably shouldn't say narrower, but quite a different focus, more on management, less on the rules of the planning system. As with most of our units, there's a field trip and 3 assessments. So that wraps up the graduate diploma. If you are part-time, you could do GIS as an option. Fewer people do that. Probably talk to me if you're interested in that option, and we'll deal with that on a one-on-one rather than me covering that in this video as well. If you go on from the Graduate Diploma in Environmental Planning and take on the next 100 credit points, then you're going to be doing the climate change unit, which, if I back up again, is another semester 1 unit. And that one's here. So here at UTAS, we have a particular focus on environmental planning, and climate change are a set of skills that are increasingly needed, no matter which sector that you're looking at. Again, this might be a little bit small for you to see, but there's a land use case study. In this year it was Florida. There'll be a change in case study emphasis in subsequent years, and a look at this bigger picture of planning in this time of changing climates. A very deliberate look at the politics. Planning is a lot about politics. That's one of the reasons that planning is an exciting field to work in. You need a variety of skills, including some skills in understanding and talking to people and all of the complexity that that brings. And it has this bigger picture look at regional plans rather than the more detailed focus that perhaps environmental impact assessment has on particular sites and what's appropriate at a particular site. So a look at the regional land use strategies and regional land use planning and why that's important. Then in your second semester in the Masters, there's a professional placement unit. So again, I will back up and go to semester 2 and go to the placement unit. So this is a unit with a lot of support and scaffolding that helps you prepare for the placement as well as undertake the placement. So again, if you can't see, this text is probably too small in the video. The first part of the unit gives you some core skills that will make your placement enjoyable and helps you, gives you a bit more context on the environment that you're going into. In the second part of the unit, that's when your placement is actually undertaken. Many people go on an individual placement to a workplace, places like Tasmanian Planning Commission, local councils, places like NRM South for people who have a particular interest in environmental planning, all sorts of places. So we have lots of connections with local providers, and we do a bespoke matchup between you and the provider to make sure that everybody gets the most out of this placement opportunity. It is a really fantastic opportunity for the host to get some things that they couldn't otherwise resource. So that placement unit is important for many people in stepping from the master's into your career and into work. The other 50% is either the professional pathway, so that's 2 units, and I can't show you these in Milo, but they're professional research methods and professional research practice. These are relatively new. We've taught them for a few years now, but there's a real demand for very practice-oriented units that prepare people for work, as opposed to doing a research thesis, which is really preparing people for a PhD pathway or planning roles where the focus of your role is research. That is very much a minority of people who come through the planning courses. And so the course now offers these 2 options to reflect the fact that most people want to do the coursework and want the professional pathway, and they don't want to do a thesis. For people who do want to do that deep dive into a thesis, and this can be great, particularly if you have a focus and a special interest area in things like urban greening, adapting to our new climate system that we found ourselves in, energy planning, then you need a good average mark. And you need to find a supervisor, but we will facilitate all of that. There will be an expression of interest call at the appropriate time of semester for either a semester 1 or a semester 2 start, and we'll set you up with a supervisor and with a research topic. So I hope that provides you with some insights into the possibilities in both the 1-year and the 2-year course. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to get in contact with me, ej.little, little@utas.edu.au, and we'll take it from there.